What's good, gang? I'm Jorby. I make music and I have a ton of hyperfixations that my family's getting really tired of hearing about, so I made my own YouTube series just so I can yap about them. In this series, we're going to take a deep dive into plot devices, concepts, and narratives used in my favorite media. But I'm adding a twist. During the creation of each essay, I'll also be making an original song inspired by the theme of the video. At the end of the video, I'll be playing you that new song to close things out. In fiction, grief is a concept that transcends genres. One way or another, it often becomes a central narrative device. It drives people, shapes their identities, and motivates some of the most memorable character arcs. But what's particularly fascinating and relatable is how differently grief can manifest. Originally introduced as the 5 stages of death, the Kubler-Ross model splits up the concept of grief into 5 stages, being denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. This framework has been developed and built upon, of course, but that's a YAP session for another time. Today, we'll be exploring these base elements of grief and how it can shape the stories of our favorite characters in fiction. Let's explore this case study using some of my favorite examples. Let's start with the anime Naruto.
Naruto, Shippuden. Been a fan of it for years.
Naruto.
Like maybe 12, 13 years old. I've literally seen Sasuke and Naruto grow up.
Anyway, if you've seen Naruto, you probably know what I'm gonna say next. The story of Sasuke Uchiha's is, at its core, about grief. After witnessing the annihilation of his entire clan at the hands of his older brother Itachi, Sasuke is consumed by loss. But instead of mourning, his grief transforms into a singular, unrelenting obsession with revenge. Just like in the real world, we can get stuck or focused in on one of the stages of grief for a long time. For Sasuke, obviously, that stage would be anger. Our favorite Uchiha orphan's anger soon becomes his identity. It alienates him from his friends, drives him to abandon the Leaf Village, and causes him to make increasingly destructive decisions in the name of becoming stronger. Bro tried to kill his own best friend how many times, bro? What makes Sasuke's grief so compelling to me is how relatable it is on a more fundamental level. When we lose someone we love, especially through a traumatic event, it's not uncommon to seek an outlet for our pain. So that outlet naturally becomes his quest to destroy Itachi, no matter what the cost. In Naruto Shippuden, Sasuke's story takes a harsh turn. After 2 years of grueling training with Orochimaru and isolating himself from everyone who cared about him, Sasuke finally catches up to Itachi. What follows is a desperate, emotional battle that culminates in Itachi collapsing at Sasuke's feet as the last bit of light leaves his eyes. His clan avenged, Sasuke can finally rest now. Little did Sasuke know, his grief was about to deepen tenfold. As Sasuke awakens in an unfamiliar room, he's greeted by the mysterious Akatsuki member, Tobi, who reveals himself to be an Uchiha as well. He reveals to Sasuke the true nature of his brother Itachi. He unveils that Itachi was actually a double agent for the Hidden Leaf Village, that he had no choice but to eliminate his own clan for the safety of the village, having been trapped in an impossible situation by the Hokage and his council. That Itachi had always truly loved Sasuke and begged the council to let him spare his little brother, doing everything he could to make sure Sasuke stayed safe from the likes of Danzo and the Root organization. Sasuke's whole existence was a sham to manipulate him into killing the one person who loved him the most. And what good did that do? Like, imagine finding out that the thing you dedicated your whole life to just turned out to be a lie. This new wave of information sent Sasuke into a storm of denial, confusion, and utter dismay that he almost didn't pull himself out of. But of course, as our hateful little red-eyed duck-haired twink does, he defaults back to anger again. This time, it's an anger aimed at the Leaf Village government for taking away not just his clan, but the brother he had looked up to and adored so deeply. I can barely even imagine how that would feel. All the stolen years, all the memories that never were, severed by the blade of a boy who was led to believe he had no other option. The stages of grief aren't a complete and static process. Sometimes you'll go from one stage to another, even being triggered back into other stages after you thought you'd made leagues of progress. Grief can be a cycle, or even a dice roll some days. New drip alert. Now let's turn to Demon Slayer, where grief and sorrow are weaved into the story from the very first episode. Tanjiro's journey begins with tragedy. His entire family is butchered by the demon Muzan Kibutsuji, leaving only his sister Nezuko alive. Alive, but transformed into a demon. While Tanjiro's defined by his kindness and empathy, grief sometimes still manifests as anger in his battles. He's not just fighting to protect others, he's driven by the pain of what was taken from him. However, Tanjiro doesn't let his anger for his situation overshadow his compassion. Instead of becoming consumed by vengeance, he channels his grief into protecting Nezuko as his last remaining family and searches for a way to cure her, all while doing his best to ensure that no one else suffers the way he and Nezuko did. On top of that, Tanjiro even empathizes with the demons he kills, recognizing that they were once human and the tragic lives that they must have led beforehand. One could even argue that Tanjiro's most visited stage of grief is actually bargaining, and how he continues his quest to recover some sense of how things were before the day his family was taken from him. There's even a point in the story where he nearly gives in to denial and submits to an illusion that his family is returned, even though he clearly knows it's just an illusion. It's a testament to the many forms grief can take. Even when it's inflicted upon you by a specific person, it can still be used to inspire resilience and empathy. We got a new fit. We got another fit. We're fitted and kitted. We're fitted and shitted. We're fitted and pissed. Another story that contrasts well with Sasuke's experience with grief is the tale of Trunks from Dragon Ball Z, or Future Trunks. Like Sasuke, Trunks' entire existence is shaped by loss and the aftermath of destruction. And unlike Tanjiro, Trunks is presented with a chance to bring back the people he lost. Well, sort of. In the future that Trunks originates from, the Red Ribbon Army scientist Dr. Gero creates a series of androids who ravage the world, killing nearly all of Earth's heroes and their civilians, including Trunks' father Vegeta and his mentor Gohan. He grows up almost completely alone, in a dystopia where hope is scarce and survival is a daily battle. Trunks' grief manifests as depression, anger, and bargaining as he loses hope, seeks revenge, and tries to restore peace. His sorrow is palpable when he reflects on his lost loved ones. But both this and his rage drive his determination to change the past. When he faces the androids, he's not just fighting them, he's fighting the helplessness and devastation that they represent. His anger gives him purpose, but it also weighs on him as he carries the burden of being his timeline's last hope. Interestingly, Trunks' anger is different from Sasuke's vengeful obsession or Tanjiro's bid to hold on to what he has left. His quest isn't just motivated by revenge. He travels back to our timeline in an effort to create a future better than the one he came from, knowing full well that it won't change his timeline whenever he returns to it. Similarly to Tanjiro, Trunks' grief fuels a desire to prevent the tragedies of his world from taking place in another, motivating him, but also leaving a crushing weight on his shoulders. Even when he succeeds in helping the main timeline, the pain of his own world's destruction never truly leaves him. I can't even imagine what that would feel like. To know you couldn't save your people, but still being able to save, like, other versions of them in a way. Am I making sense? Anyway, I believe that Trunks' story shows how grief can manifest as a sometimes quiet but unrelenting anger. One that acts as a fuel source, driving you forward, but never letting you forget about everything you've lost. Okay, now it's time to yap about Zelda for way too long. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask tells a story so steeped in grief that I can't help but bring it up. In this harrowing sequel to the all-time classic Ocarina of Time, Link goes searching for his missing fairy, Navi, and finds himself in the doomed land of Termina, where a moon threatens to destroy the world in 3 days. The game is drenched in themes of loss, and nowhere is this more apparent than in the masks Link collects, each embodying a resident of Termina's unresolved grief and despair. The Deku mask, for instance, is linked to the tragic death of a Deku butler's son whose spirit lingers within the mask. The Goron mask contains the spirit of Darmani, a fallen hero whose grief over failing to protect his people binds him to the mortal plane. And the Zora mask, tied to Macau. Macau? It's Macau. We're going with Macau. And the Zora mask, tied to Macau, the famous Zora guitarist, represents his sorrow over being unable to live on to see his loved ones and unborn children. These masks aren't just tools. They're physical avatars of grief and regret that Link literally wears as he carries their burdens forward. Even outside the main 3 masks, the people of Termina live in denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, reflecting once again those 5 stages of grief. In the beginning, the Clocktown construction team exemplifies denial in their continuing failure to properly acknowledge the looming threat of the moon. Like, it's right there. It's literally right there. Like, how can you miss it? It's right there, bro. There's not even any precautions taken as they continue to make preparations for the Carnival of Time on the 3rd day, as if in complete denial. Another heavy example of denial in practice is the postman. On the final day of the cycle before the world's destruction, a letter can actually be found that's written by the postman, addressed to himself. In this letter, he begs himself to let go of his delivery duties and flee Termina. There's a strange cognitive dissonance here. He knows full well that the moon is going to fall and destroy everything, but he can't pull himself away from his duty. Maybe the postman suffers from OCD, or perhaps this is social commentary on Japan's work culture and how they're encouraged to prioritize their job over their own well-being. Or maybe there's a strange delusion of comfort in continuing operations as usual. Because what if tomorrow does come? It's not coming. The Deku King of the Swamp is consumed by anger as he channels all of this fear, anxiety, and confusion into anger towards this monkey that he believes has taken or game overed his daughter. In his rage, he's so focused on this issue that he totally ignores the moon and the threat it poses to him and his people. He barely even seems aware of the poisoned swamp water that plagues his entire ecosystem. This anger of his could also be interpreted as a result of all these problems combined. Hidden in the layers of one of this game's side quests, there's a fairly decent example of bargaining as well. Literally and metaphorically. Once Link completes the Oceanside Spider House, there's a man who will offer Link compensation to take shelter in it, assuming Link must be the owner. You have the opportunity to run into this man multiple times throughout your journey. Depending on which day in the 3-day cycle that you encounter him, the amount of money he has left to offer you decreases. To me, this suggests that throughout the 3 days, he's been incurring expense after expense in his desperate bid to find shelter from the moon that threatens everything he knows. The rancher Cremia grieves for her little sister Romani's lost security as the moon approaches. This case is an extremely heavy one, as Cremia is almost enacting a denial by proxy approach here. If Link approaches her on the final day, Cremia will reveal that she has indeed heard the rumors of the other evacuees. She almost seems like she's already accepted the possibility of the world ending, or maybe she's in denial herself. She decides not to tell her little sister Romani what's happening, and she ends up deciding to let her try the famed adult beverage Chateau Romani and offers to let her little sister sleep in her bed with her for one last good night's sleep. There's something just extra sad to me about the fact that she had to shoulder all the burdens of raising her sister alone. But now she has to let her be blissfully unaware that her whole world is about to end. Without the interference of Link, so many of these stories would just come to a tragic end. The lamenting milk bar owner, Gourmand, who regrets not seeing his dream of a full band playing a show at his prized bar. The lovers, Anju and Kafei, grapple with the loss of Kafei's adulthood, and Anju, being unaware of where Kafei is gone, leaves both of them preemptively mourning their stolen future in the face of annihilation. Everywhere you turn in this game, grief manifests in the form of a palpable desperation, a seemingly futile struggle against the inevitability of death and the loss of loved ones and the inability to change the past. Unless you're Link. The Song of Healing ties many of these threads together. Whenever Link plays it, he helps others confront their grief and find peace, manifesting their pain into actual masks that allow him to continue his journey. But what about Link himself? He's searching for his lost friend Navi, and although the game never explicitly states it, his own grief seems to simmer beneath the surface. His relentless journey through Termina almost mirrors the process of working through grief, both his and the world's. Majora's Mask is a poignant exploration of the many aspects of grief. Link may not express his emotions outright, but every mask he wears, every soul he helps, and every step he takes towards the looming moon is a testament to the way grief drives action. This game asks us, how do we confront our grief? And how can we transform the emotions it brings into something meaningful? A Beast Boy fit. Ooh, he got that Beast Boy fit. Ooh, he got that Beast Boy fit. Switching gears to another classic, we find an often overlooked example about how grief can shape a character in subtle yet profound ways. Garfield Logan, better known as Beast Boy, is the team's comic relief, a jokester whose lighthearted antics often mask the deep sorrow that defines his backstory. While his humor makes him seem carefree, it's actually his way of coping with a life filled with loss. Beast Boy's grief starts with his childhood. He contracted a rare illness that could have killed him. While a miraculous serum saved his life, it turned his skin green and gave him the ability to transform into animals. These powers, though, came at a steep cost. He was ostracized and feared by those around him, losing the sense of normalcy and connection that most kids take for granted. Then there's his time with the Doom Patrol, a team of misfit heroes who became his surrogate family. While they gave him purpose, they also reinforced his feelings of inadequacy. Mento, in particular, pushed Beast Boy to his limits, often making him feel like he wasn't enough. Losing the Doom Patrol as a stable family unit deepened his grief, even as he tried to find belonging within the Teen Titans. What I find very relatable about Beast Boy is the way that his grief manifests. Unlike our previously mentioned characters, Sasuke or Trunks, who channel their sorrow into anger, Beast Boy often uses comedy as a way to lighten the load. His jokes and playful demeanor are a way of protecting himself, and sometimes others, from the pain he carries. But moments of vulnerability reveal the depth of his grief, especially when he opens up about his past or when he deals with the loss of the people he cares about, like Terra. Beast Boy's story is a reminder that grief often doesn't manifest in rage or tears. It can also appear repressed in the form of laughter, masking a pain that runs deep. His journey really resonates because it reflects the way that many of us cope with loss, by putting on a brave face, even when it hurts. Grief is universal, but the ways it manifests are as diverse as the characters who carry it. Sasuke channels his sorrow into vengeance. Tanjiro turns his pain into protection. Future Trunks and Link show how grief can inspire transformation and healing. And then there's Beast Boy, whose jokes and laughter mask a deep well of pain. A reminder that grief doesn't always look the way we expect. What ties all these stories together is their deep humanity. Grief and anger are powerful forces, and through them, these characters remind us that loss, no matter how painful, can shape who we are and how we face the world. Whether it leads to revenge, protection, or healing, grief is more than an emotion. It's a narrative force that drives some of the most unforgettable characters in storytelling. Thank you for joining me in this experimental exploration of grief in fiction. If you enjoyed this journey, I hope you'll stick around for more episodes where we explore how stories and the emotions behind them shape the characters we care about the most. And now, as promised, here's my original song. I called it Grief. I hope it resonates with you.
I know you'll never let it show.
and I'm by myself, that's when I'll hang my head. Indecisive victory remains defeat. Then the boy I was will watch the colors bleed until it pulls me down, until I'm at my knees. And then I cut myself until I hollow me. I sat with all my anger inside my hell, and when I asked its name, it introduced itself